Welcome to Merkaba Chakras, where we talk Buddhism in the fifth dimension.
Welcome to another podcast episode of Merkaba Chakras. I'm your host, Vaughn Galt, and today we learn how one doctor's pursuit into wellness and metaphysics led her to research the healing energies in the Egyptian pyramids, crystals, sound healing frequencies, and even her own near-death experience led to creating energy healing technology called Trinfinity 8 and many others. She documents her journey in her book, Fractals of God. So with that, Dr. Kathi Forti, welcome to Merkaba Chakras.
Hey, hi, Vaughn.
Hi, thanks for
Nice
taking
to
the
be here.
invitation. Oh, yes, of course. I'm so blessed to talk to such wonderful people on the leading edge of fifth dimensional and higher healing from within source. So, and I'm always so fascinated with the new ways that people have tapped into that crystalline Christ consciousness of source and that infinite energy healing and put it in their practice and in the modalities that they teach, in their books that they write, and of course in the technologies that they create. And there's always one common theme. The healing comes from source itself. It taps into that high gamma brainwave, high infinite heart energy. Always is consistent. So everybody's tapping into the same fountain of youth. So with that, Kathi, please tell us, how did you start into bioenergy healing work?
Well, I've always been kind of interested in energetics, but not until my background is in clinical psychology, and I had a practice in Los Angeles for many years, and I had a near-death experience. My heart stopped, and I found myself propelled through this tunnel at an amazing rate. And I saw the light at the end of the tunnel, and I thought to myself, is this the light everyone's been talking about? And did I just die? And since there was not much I could do about it, I, pretty much said, well, okay, let's go with the flow and see what happens. And but I was stopped before I could go into the light. And I just hovered there, and I tried everything I could possibly do to make myself go into that, it was just so bright. And then I had this thought that, oh, this is kind of boring. I'm just sitting. I was horizontal, feet first, which was a very odd position to be in. I don't know if everybody goes through the tunnel that way, but that was the way I went through it. And when I thought this is really boring, all this energy poured into me. It was just an implosion of energy, and it spun me back around through the tunnel, sent me back as fast as could be. And I heard voices in my head saying, breathe, Kathi, breathe, and my whole left side of my body was paralyzed. There was not much I could do except hearing these voices. And they pretty much told me just to relax. And I could feel them clicking back all of my left side into place where I had feeling with it again. And I did have a pressure in my chest, and thinking that I'll probably have to see a cardiologist or something. And they pretty much said, no, you don't. And it was from that moment on, I didn't know what that was all about. But within 24 hours after coming back, I mean, they did tell me my heart had stopped. I don't know how my heart stopped, why it stopped, but it stopped. And because I didn't have any health related problems at that time. And this was in 2003. And but within 24 hours after coming back, I was obsessed with quantum physics. I was waking up in the middle of the night every night and researching all these thoughts going through my head, and I was understanding them. And whoever was talking to me at the time, because I really didn't know who, was correcting things I was reading and said, well, that's not quite accurate, but that's as far as your race has gotten so far in their understanding. So, I mean, this continued on, and then I'd go into my work the next day and I'd feel everybody's emotions and it wasn't a very good feeling. And so I did call in an old friend of mine who's a true visionary, and he'd work with me on difficult clients. And He never needed to know anything about them except their name and their permission. And I asked him, can you just see what's going on with me? And he did. And he took a long time. He says, well, you almost died. He said, but, you've got all these new guides now, and they're very technologically oriented. And I said, what do you want? What did they want? And he said, this looks like a pre-life contract. He said, you're going to develop some type of technology that deals with medicine or a new way of thinking about medicine or healing. And I just laughed and I thought, oh boy, he's finally wrong. But, it became kind of a magnificent obsession. I couldn't walk away from it until I accepted it and trusted and said, okay, what do you guys want me to do? And then the information started pouring in. I would get whole downloads, or I'd get pictures of things, or I'd hear things in my head, or just a simultaneous, just an automatic knowing. And so it took 5 years to develop the Trinfinity 8. I think if the whole download would have came at once, I probably would have gone crazy, and they probably knew it. And I would have said, oh, forget it. This looks like too big a project for anybody, and, but it took 5 years. And I pretty much put all of my resources into it because they did not want it out there being shared with investors because it would be compromised.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. So they were trying to give me something totally different than was out there already, because this dealt with math, not frequencies. It dealt with math. And I thought to myself, why are you giving it to me? Math was my worst subject in school. So.
Right. So I have a couple questions in the background that got you to creating this technology. So first of all, what kind of accident caused your near-death experience? Was it a car accident or something like that?
No, that's the weird thing. It was the night of the Wesak moon, which is like, was it May 8th or so? And the last client of the day was a Buddhist nun. And she said to me, this is the night of the Wesak moon. And I said, well, what's that? And she goes, it's when the veils between the dimensions in heaven and earth are very thin and anything can happen. And I was just walking to my car when this whoosh came out of me. That was all my old guides leaving. And apparently when I went home thinking about what had happened, I suddenly found myself going into the tunnel, and that's when my heart had stopped. So, it wasn't a car accident. It was a totally different way. But they told me later it was the only way they could do it to make the transfer of guidance, because I was going from a lower dimensional level to a higher dimensional level. And it was more difficult for them to just come into me. And that was that implosion of energy in the tunnel. It was them kind of joining with me to be able to help facilitate this mission that I didn't know I had at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Okay. So a Buddhist nun was your last client. And what kind of practice do you have?
It was a clinical psychology. I did adults, individual children. I had a neurofeedback practice as well, working a lot with ADHD. So I had pretty much the gamut,
Okay. So you're a doctor of psychology.
Yes.
And so, and so you're just on your way home, and then all of a sudden you feel this whoosh of energy.
I was walking to my car.
You're walking to the car.
Felt the whoosh.
Okay. And what did this whoosh feel like, of this energy?
It's the strangest thing, because I've never been able to find anywhere in literature about this feeling of coming out of your solar plexus, all this kind of whoosh feeling. And with it, I felt like I was done with my work here on Earth. And I felt like it was like all your friends had left or something. And I was like, what's that about? And when I went home and I thought about it, and that's when all of a sudden I got caught into this swirling vortex and found myself drawn into the tunnel. So it was a completely different type of near-death experience.
Interesting.
But it was a transitional type of near-death experience where I wasn't meant to go to the other side. I was meant to get into the tunnel so that the energy transfer could be facilitated.
So that your new set of guides, spirit guides, angels, etc., can come in to your aura field to help facilitate in your next step. So, okay, you guys, if you guys feel like this whoosh of energy coming out of your chakras, and then and the swirl, that was it a physical swirl of vortex, or was it in your mind? In your mind,
my mind's eyes, I started to see a swirling vortex. and I obviously passed out because at the time I was drinking tea, and when I did come back into my body, the tea was all over, so I had dropped it, so I lost consciousness. Yeah.
Interesting. And then who took you to the hospital?
Nobody, because nobody was there. That was the problem. And when I came back into my body and I was paralyzed, the left side, there was nobody there to help. So, I did not find out till many years later when I happened to see a cardiologist about, because after I had COVID, I was wheezing a little bit. And I went to a cardiologist just to check it out. And he said, "Oh, this is interesting." And I didn't tell him I'd had a near-death experience many, many years prior. And he said, "You had some scarring on the left side of your heart. Did you ever have a heart attack?" And then I thought, there's the physical proof, and I never had any problems with my heart afterwards. In fact, my guides had said, "You don't need to see a cardiologist. At the time it happened, you're going to be fine." But years later, there was the evidence of that it had happened.
Okay. So you came out of your near-death experience in your house. You didn't wake up in the hospital. Okay. So you came out of your near-death experience in your house. And then when you woke up out of your near-death experience, did you feel different?
I would just wonder, I was just a little perplexed. What was that about? And I was concerned about the fact is that I had lost, my left side of my body had lost feeling in the whole entire left side. And then suddenly, there was this, I could hear the clicking in my head as it was being reconnected. And then I thought, well, I guess I'm okay, even though there's a little bit of pressure in my chest. And, they told me it's going to be fine. And, it's sort of like, well, what are these voices that are talking to me? Who are they? What do they want?
Okay. So then why quantum physics? I mean, why didn't you go into spirituality or go into your religion or go into I don't know, a nature retreat? Why quantum physics? Why that specific one were you drawn to?
I think I was really being led to that area because they wanted me to know what was existing out there already, what others were doing, so I could get up to speed on the understanding of quantum physics before they started to do these downloads, because otherwise it just would have, but I was understanding it, which was surprising. And that surprised me.
Right.
So whatever. It was like they were merging with me to show, and sometimes they would look in my memory banks to see if there was something that I could relate to that they could use, which was funny because when I did start working with the crystal component of transmitting these algorithms from a computer into crystal rods, they showed me a picture of Superman in the Fortress of Solitude because I'd seen that movie and I said, "Oh, and he's downloading the crystals of the history of his race." And I said, "Oh, you want me to use crystals? They contain information." So I think that they do try to see what you already understand and work with.
Right. So I asked a lot of deep diving questions, but just to get more and more and more, just to understand more and more and more, because it is the question that is the most important, because you don't ask the appropriate questions, you don't get the answer. That's how Source is, because there's infinite answers and there's only so much time. So pardon if I ask a lot of questions. So your sixth sense so oftentimes when you tap into the other side and you bring that energy with you, and you had obviously a big energy transfer, from a higher dimensional or other side, your first sixth sense that you activated was your natural empathic abilities, and you were hearing and feeling everybody. What was the common hearing and feeling that you were getting from most of the people around you in society?
Well, it wasn't necessarily happiness.
Is everybody sad all the time?
I was feeling people's anger and frustration, and that did not feel good at all. So, it was almost telling me one door is closing. Your psychology, career in clinical psychology is ending because you can't keep doing this, taking people's stuff in. And I didn't really know how to block it out at that stage. And you're moving into a whole different chapter of your life. And do you choose to accept this mission or not? That's pretty much what it was about. And it was a a lesson in trust.
Right, right. So most of what you get from most of the society as you're meandering through your day, the grocery store, at wherever, most people are angry and they're unhappy and they're sad about their life,
Well,
especially.
that was when I first had this experience. I've learned, to block it out.
To block it out, yeah.
After initially just coming out of the near death, within like a few weeks, within the few weeks afterwards, that's when I was feeling it. So I was like wide open to other people's emotions.
Right, and then and this is for other people to understand, because a lot of people ask with people who are really empathetic or really high frequency, why do you guys steer away from lots of people? This is exactly why. Because lots of people are projecting out toxic emotions because they haven't resolved whatever issue is causing those in their life. And so they're spewing out these energies. And for people like yourself, who you came into a sixth sense of empathy, extreme empathy, and connectedness, because empathy is connectedness to everybody else. So now you're connected to everybody else. And now you know what everybody else, for the most part, is working on in their sojourn. So that answers a huge question that a lot of people ask about these high vibe people. They should be in the cities, they should be in the dense areas, raise the frequency, etc. There is a trade-off. They are literally taking in all your psychic garbage dumping.
That's right. To this day, I still don't like to be in big crowds because it's a little too bombarding.
Yeah. So how do you create, and this is really important for people who are like this, how do you create those respectful boundaries? Because you can't seclude yourself, isolate yourself forever. You're going to go into the midst of the masses. So how do you create boundaries? What are the things that you do?
I have a very simple little thing that I just stumbled upon because I realized that this was a universe where free will and free choice was the underlying tenet. And I said, well, if I don't consent to that, then it can't actually do its damage. Mm-hmm. And so if I started to find that, I would just use the mantra, I do not consent. That's all. I do not consent. Sometimes you might feel like, being bombarded with some type of energy force coming in. I immediately say, I do not consent, and they back off. They have to, or they just accumulate their own karma. It's the rules here. And once you find out you have control in saying, I do not consent. Now, if you do nothing, you're actually consenting.
True. That's true. So did you guys hear that? So if you are one of these people who really, really are so empathetic that you take on the negative energies that other people are projecting out because they're working on their melodramas that cause these emotions to come out of their chakras, set a boundary that you do not consent, that these are not your issues. Some people are so empathetic that they actually take it on physically in their body.
That's true.
So like if they're really, really so empathetic with somebody having, let's say, a heart issue, they will have a heart issue or symptoms of a heart attack themselves, like even though they shouldn't. So that is really, really important, and that's a piece of gold for that. So these downloads, what are these downloads like for you? What did it feel like, so people recognize what is a download when they get one?
Well, it's like a whole bunch of information that you didn't have privy to before, and suddenly you know how this works, how whatever, and you haven't read any books on it. And it's not like your head is spinning and you're bombarded with headaches or anything like that. It's just information that just is, just comes to you, a massive amounts of information. So, it's probably the easiest way to, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't, to knock you out or anything like that. And, I think that when that happens, people, they kind of know how much you can take. I once had a client who was a psychic, and she was like a space cadet whenever she channeled something through. And so I put her on an EEG because I did neurofeedback at that time. And I said, allow that whoever you're working with your channel, allow them to be there right now. And I noticed that her frontal lobe, the being was coming into her frontal lobe, which is your executive function. You know, she was like, there was enough brake fluid, you know.
Was it here? Was it here?
Yes, it was your frontal lobe, right. Which is
your third eye.
Kids who have ADD or ADHD, it's like the frontal lobe is out to lunch. And so I said to her, you know, you're having all this slow wave activity in your frontal lobe because they're trying to look through your eyes or whatever. I said, ask that entity or that whoever you're working with that you feel comfortable and safe with, that to step back into your brain, into the occipital lobes where that slow wave activity is okay, you know. And she did, and I could see it on the screen immediately. The electrodes changed, the electrical conductivity of her brain changed, and she goes, "Oh, I'm still getting the information, but I no longer feel like a space cadet." So that was that. It was just a simple insight. I said, ask them to step back in your brain.
Go to the back.
To the back, to the occipital lobe, where you have that's more theta and alpha activity. It's more dreamier. You certainly don't want it in your front. Anybody who's got too much of that usually is going to have depression, anxiety, impulsivity, you know, and that's not where you want that slower wave activity.
Yeah.
So but the people you work with, you might be channeling, don't know that, you know, so you have to ask, you have to tell them.
Yeah. And when you were getting those downloads, did you get any inkling of like the names or the who the entities on the other side was sending it over to you from?
Yeah, it wasn't so much their names because I got the impression early on names mean nothing in that world. Okay. You know, and to
their frequency
almost sophomore. But I did ask where they were from, and they said they were known as the founders. They came from the 8th dimension and beyond. They had been here for hundreds of thousands of years before a lot of the races were seeded. And
seeded by whom?
Well, that goes into a whole other story.
Can you give me a short, like.
There were, you know, source energy did seed angelic realms. Angelic realms did seed other races, and those races seeded our planet. You know,
okay, so aliens from different planets seeded us. Okay,
different. I mean, the Anunnaki. You can go on. There's a whole bunch. Which races they seeded. So the founders were the 3 Christos races, which were the closest one to the original source. And
where did they come from? Originally,
all they told me was like the 8th dimension and beyond.
8th dimension, so some planetary system from the 8th dimension and beyond, not from Earth, obviously, because it was the beginning.
You know, I thought, well, why are you picking me? And it's funny because I have a good friend, James Van Prague, the psychic, and he did a reading for me once, which, you know, it was a freebie, and he goes, you come, he says, they're showing me, I don't even know what this means. He said, they're showing you come from the Melchizedek energy. And he said, teaching. He said, you don't come from this world. And then he starts laughing and he says, I always knew that about you.
Well, none of us come from this world, right? Yes, we're all, our energies are
worlds. Yes,
right.
Worlds. We're all aliens when you
really our souls are all aliens. Obviously, you're human, I'm human.
What dimension or what level we come from and so forth like that. And that's not to mean, you know, somebody's better or has more information than others, because we're all in this process together. So
right. This is the grand experiment, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So Earth, all the souls that is incarnate into Earth come from a plethora of different backgrounds. Higher dimensions, different planetary systems, other incarnations, and Earth is not the only.
Yes, most of our history has been lost.
Yeah. Okay, well so that's what you got from your downloads in terms of that area. So then we go the last question I have about that process of getting information, and we're going to go into the technology more. So they were giving you algorithms.
Yes, and I didn't even know what an algorithm. It's sort of like a recipe. If you put a spoonful of this and teaspoon of that, then you get the final product. You put it all together. An algorithm is assembling of numbers to create a specific direction for information. And basically, they were telling me that everything in the universe has a mathematical signature to it. Our DNA is mathematically coded, and we basically need to speak to it in a language it understands. Frequency is one way, but a much more direct route into the consciousness of the cell is math. And, that was like a concept to me that was just so foreign, because I tell you the truth, I didn't like math.
Oh yeah, I know. I understand. Like my husband loves math, and I'm just kind of like, I like more history, archaeology, that kind of stuff. But so the math, just to get a taste of the math that you were getting, can you spit out one of the math, example of the math that you got? Was it like a string of numbers?
It's series. It's a strings of numbers, and
are they long, or are they like 10 numbers? Are they like 100 numbers?
Some are longer than others, and some are shorter. And it was sort of like, so we sat down, and this took many months to do, almost a year of that 5-year process of emotions, substances, minerals, just about anything you could think of. And what was the emotional algorithm? I mean, not the emotional, what was the mathematical algorithm for them? So, I always throw out the fact is that vitamin C has a mathematical algorithm. And if you transmit that algorithm to the person, you don't necessarily have to take the physical vitamin C. And that was a kind of a mind stretcher to me. And I thought, this sounds like something from a sci-fi realm. And but I mean, that was back then in 2003. But now I understand it. And so you can, so when you're putting together Trinfinity 8 programs, we have over 72, one program, which might be just balance energy centers, may have over 100 different algorithms behind that one program.
Right.
So, which include or balance, restore energy, restore immune system or something like that. Or I don't say restore, I just say stimulate the immune system, because you're the one restoring and stimulate. We're just kind of facilitating the pathway, greasing the tracks or the wheels, so to say, for you as a soul and your body to do what it can do naturally and heal. Nobody else. In fact, I always tell people, if they tell you, if you go to somebody and they say, I can heal you, or my machine can do this, or I can heal you and so forth, run, because that's not true.
It's source that heals, is it not? It's source. Yes. Okay. And there's also a factor of your pre-life plan. Is that the case as well?
Well, yeah, sometimes some people need their illnesses for what they came here to work with.
To do. Okay. All right. So can you renege on that? Can you renege on that, or is it going to come back in a lifetime like, oh, well, you didn't want to do it last time, so we're going to do it again? Okay.
We had somebody who had she had tremors, her hand tremors for like maybe over 20 years, and she did one session and her tremors stopped, which totally, that wasn't me, it was another practitioner who did this, blew her away, and it was so disquieting to the person not to have her tremors. She said, I don't know what I do without my tremors. Her whole life was centered around these tremors. And so, of course, they came back.
Right. That's what
she wasn't ready to let go of them yet.
Right. Well, that's what they found in a lot of Buddhist energy healers will help somebody get their eyesight back. Like we'll do energy healing, and they like Reiki, and they will get the eyesight back. And what they found is some people, they identify so much with being blind, and the way that the relationships are, the way that everybody sees them, the way they see themselves, it was too much of a game changer for them that they'll put their glasses back on and pretend that they have bad eyesight, and then they will basically bring back the bad eyesight after already being able to see for a little while. So, and it's interesting. Again, where the mind goes, the rest follows. And the mind is following your inner consciousness. It's just a vehicle. It's taking cues from the essence of the person. So the essence of the person is going, I don't know about this. I'm not feeling like I'm not ready for this. Then
I mean, the same thing was when I did, psychology, psychotherapy. some people, you can tell who the visitors were who just came in there thinking it was everybody else's problem. And you came in there, and then there were others who were the buyers. They knew that they had to do the work, and they were ready to do the work. And if I just saw a visitor, I pretty much said, come back when you're ready.
Yeah, come back when you're ready. So I want to give a little bit of a basic background explanation for the Buddhist audience. Because they're like, oh, can you give us a little bit of background, Vaughn? So, math. Okay, so we know in Buddhist mandalas, and I've written many books on Buddhist mandalas. And actually, I got that from a download from Metatron, who was like, Vaughn, I need you to take all of the sacred geometry in all the world's religions, modern medical research that all these Buddhist monks and nuns are doing in mindfulness and consciousness work. And I need you to basically package it in a way that everybody's going to be able to understand who have no background in metaphysics or your lifetime of understanding Buddhism in the different monasteries that you grew up going to. So wrap that all around and deliver it. And basically what came through was that everybody is an energy field. Your chakras, your energy field, it's your Merkaba, it's your mandala, it's your frequency. It's all the same. It's your Metatron's cube, whatever you want to call it, the sacred geometry of yourself, all the different things that you put into that. But that has an image, and they've proven it in semantics research that everybody has a unique vocal DNA from their voice, from the frequency of their voice, and it has an image. That image can also be translated to a frequency that's unique to you. That's your vocal DNA. That's your song. And everybody has a unique song inside them, your soul's song. It's very different. Everybody's different. And when everybody's fine-tuned to the perfect pitch frequency, the healthy frequency, it's like a symphony that's playing in the universe. Okay. Now that frequency, that song that you are, can be equated to your mathematical sequence. Okay, so it's just like they say in the Bible and in others, that source God started with the sound. Okay, the sound created the image, which created the form of what was being created. And in Buddhism, we focus a lot on the symbolism of the lotus, because the harmonics of the energy of anything in creation, of all the chakras, creates a toroidal field that looks like a lotus. And in the middle is you. Okay? So the first thing in creation that God created, according to Buddhism, is a flower. That flower is the lotus energy that created the being manifested to walk its creation, and then it can experience itself through you. So that's the basic understanding of math equals sound equals image equals form. Go ahead.
The thing is, if you took a 64 sided star tetrahedron, which I have one, and got it
64 chromosomes.
Yes, got it from Zach A. Glass in Australia, one of my people, one of my owners of my technology. And if you collapse that 64-sided star tetrahedron, which is considered the matrix for the world, it would look exactly like a flower of life.
Exactly. Well, it is. It would look like the flower of life. It would look like the Sri Yantra. It would look like the yin yang. It would look. There's all different forms. The Star of David. Yeah, and then if you map all that, it comes out to the math. So many different ways in understanding that. There's nothing occult or negative. It's just you. So moving beyond that explanation, because I wanted to explain to people who are going, I don't get it. Math becomes a person, becomes the healing. So if you're out of balance, then your frequency, your energy field is out of balance. So how do you tune an energy being? Through the sound, or in this case, the math that creates the sound to to tune that person back into good health?
Well, that was really important because they told me it wasn't all about math. I mean, math was the key component, but then they said you do need to bring in some sound because the sound sets up for the math to flow into the cells. So it sets up a conducive field. Okay. So they had me work with specific sound frequencies that worked with the math. And then they brought in the science of fractals, which I had never even heard of. And when you use a fractal in combination with math and frequencies, it amplifies the information coming through to the body. And then, of course, they wanted to put it all so that you could hook in crystal rods into your computer and have that information all stream through the computer to your body. And it was sort of like, wow, that's really weird stuff.
That's really cool. That's really cool, Kathi. So the fractals, was that how did the fractals come in? Is it like a image or what
Yes.
was the?
So I had a fractal designer, so moving images of fractals. And, the closest thing you can think of with a fractal is like those Russian, I think the Matryoshka, those nesting dolls.
Yeah. Or Mandelbrot sets.
Yes, it's the exact same duplicate. And so if you zero in anywhere on the fractal, you'll see the exact hole of the fractal again. And you zero in even more into that little thing, and you'll see the exact thing again. And if we're all God, then we're all fractals of God. And that's why they told me that the name of the book, of course, I had, the subtitle was A Psychologist's Near-Death Experience and Journeys into the Mystical, but the main book was Fractals of God. And that was, they said, was important, that we were all fractals of God.
That's a beautiful answer to my next question. Yeah. So what is a fractal of God? It is you. We are all mini versions of bigger and bigger versions of the Godhead. I love that. And then for people to understand algorithm, this is, people who have a computer science or a IT background will understand this. But basically, your computer has a crystal inside it. Okay, the computer chips have aspects of crystals. And the reason why they have crystals as aspects of the chip to hold all the storage in your computer is because crystals can hold 10 times or more information than like a floppy disk or anything else like that because of the fractal nature of the crystal. That's why every computer for storage have crystal.
Has some crystal component.
Exactly.
Radios, you name it. Yes.
Yeah, and it's for
yeah.
Exactly, and it's for storage. And so the image of Superman is beautiful because if you're going to put a whole huge string of data like mathematical numbers, you're going to put it into crystals so they can hold all of that. Okay. And they actually created, I can't remember what, I'll put it on the show notes for people who want to geek out on the knowledge of storing information in crystals. But they found that they can take all of human existence information and put it into a crystal that they call the Superman crystal.
A big zip drive, right?
A big zip drive. Okay, so Trinfinity 8 research has some hard hitters backing up your findings that it helps people, you can say, heal or get better from the ailments that they are suffering through. So here's some of the heavy hitters. And I know some of the people who follow the podcast know them. There's Healing Waters Research Foundation. They do research also with the materials from Dr. Emoto. There's Dr. Glenn Reen of the Heart Math Research Institute at Princeton University and Quantum Biology Research Lab, who has done research on the Schumann frequency to prove that when humans in particular areas have a huge heartfelt emotion, they know something big is going to happen in that area. Okay, which proves that we are all interconnected to each other, and also to the earth, because their technology measures like they do earthquakes on the earth, and that's how they know. So Heart Math Institute, Dr. Mitchell Kessler of Global Health Solutions.
Michael Kessler.
Is Michael? Okay. Dr. Norman Shealy, the inventor of the gamma brainwave PEMF energy healing device, which I want to call it the healing halo. I love that. Dr. Beverly Rubik, who served as one of 18 congressionally appointed members of the Program Advisory Board to the Office of Alternative Medicine at the U.S. National Institute of Health, NIH, from 1992 to 1997. And she also chaired the NIH panels on electromagnetic medicine and manual healing. Now, her recent findings that 5G wireless radiation causes symptoms similar to COVID-19 is a must read and is also in the show descriptions. So for you that want to know about that link, that is in there for the show notes. So that is some heavy hitters, and they all back up Trinfinity 8. So what are some of the profound illnesses or viruses that have reported fantastic results to people who've tried it as an addition to your modern medical practice?
Well, you have to realize that when Trinfinity 8 came out, it was 2009. It was one of the first ones on the block. So a lot of these researchers who are very well known and were making a name for themselves really were fascinated because it was using a whole different type of technology. So we got pretty much the gamut, that they were interested in testing this. And Dr. Glenn Ryan, he took liquid placenta DNA. And he looked at 3 of our programs. One was reverse aging, telomere repair, and it was divine alignment. And he would suspend it right to the crystal with the information coming through the crystal plugged into our device. And he would see what the electrical conductivity it was. Now, remember, the crystal wasn't even touching the liquid placenta DNA. It was just suspended maybe a half an inch above it.
Right.
And he found that it increased the conductivity, electrical conductivity, by 50 to 60%, which is indicative of the cell being able to repair itself. DNA cells to repair. So he started looking at all this. And so that was one thing that we knew that it was affecting reverse aging. And, one of our things in there obviously was, it helps you stay younger. I always tell people, normally people don't want to tell their age, but I'm going to be 70 in November.
You look great. Those telomeres have definitely grown in length.
That's all energy. People always ask, who does you? And I'm saying, no, it's energy. Energy and used in a proper way can keep you very young where you don't have to use all this other stuff. So, it was one of the things that we looked at. We also looked at Michael Kessler. Dr. Michael Kessler did the Omega heart rate variability tests. And he happened to do this. He came to us and we were at some conference. And he didn't tell us he was testing people who were coming over and doing a free 15-minute session on our device. And so he had got one guy, asked him, he said, can I take a pre-test of you? And before you go over and do that machine, because he was really curious. And the guy was 68, but his heart rate value was showing that he was like 76. Okay. And so then he did a 15-minute session, came back and improved his overall health by 36%. Then he was curious to know, did it last? And the next day he asked the guy, can you come back? Don't do a second session, just come back, retest again. And it continued to go up by 46%.
Oh, okay.
So then he was curious even more. He said, go over to that other booth and use the other person's technology. I won't say who it was. And he retested him and it dropped down.
Oh, okay.
And so he said, okay, go back to Trinfinity 8, do a third session, and let's see what happens. And we were oblivious to this whole process, what was going on. And it continued. It brought him right back up where he was originally. It undid the damage of that other energetic or whatever unit was doing. And so Dr. Michael Kessler said, what do you have in this device? Because it's pretty amazing from what it's showing on our testing results. And so then he took on a bigger study and so forth. And we had very good results from that as well. So we've also done it in swimming pools, infused. We had big underwater speakers and a floating platform where it was attached to our computers, but suspended long wires that put the crystals in the pool. And we did it for a floating Reiki class here in Maui. And it was the first time I'd ever done it. So I didn't know what the results would be. And all I did was I prepped the water playing I Am Love. So, and people noticed immediately the water got warmer. And it changed the pH. It by the balance of the pool, it corrected the pH balance too, because we had a pool expert come in and at the time doing it and looking at it. And so then we played I Am Healed. Now this is from my other Ascension 11 technology, not the Trinfinity 8, but that's all spiritually based programs. We did I Am Healed. And this one woman, she was Coast Guard. And she said, that was amazing. She said, I have been torn over experience that happened to me many years ago as a Coast Guard. There was 2 sisters drowning and I was only able to save one of them. And she said that has bothered me for so long. She says, when I was floating in the pool and feeling that energy of what was being transported through the water, which is the best conductor of energy you can imagine. She said that sister that died came to her and talked to her and thanked her for saving her other sister, obviously survived, because the family needed that sister more at that time to be alive. And it was just such a healing experience for this woman to let go of that guilt that she couldn't save both of the sisters. So, and we were having things like that. People were saying, oh yeah, I felt beings around me and things I was letting go of. And, it doesn't tell you what needs to be healed, but what needs to be healed and released in your body. And the water, as a good conductor of energy, was providing that facilitation. So that was pretty amazing. So we thought, anybody wants, we'll go and infuse your water with whatever you want in your swimming pool. Invite your friends over, and if you want to experience the benefit of that, that's another aspect. Because some of our people actually infuse their drinking water with it. Yes.
That sounds like a great pool party, I must say. I love that.
You never know what to expect. That's the beauty of it. It's sort of like people tell me, and I said, really? You did that too?
Wow. Well, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go over the Ascension 11 technology and then the Trinfinity 8 system. And then, go over common questions that people have on, which one should I get? Which one should I start with? And et cetera. So let me share my screen. Here is the Trinfinity8.com. And this is the system that you first developed, right?
Yes,
so there's the fractal images that you're talking about.
Yes,
and
so many of them. And then you can see the crystal rods, which have circuits. There's no electrical energy going through it, but you can see those black rods that are on the end of these are pure quartz crystals. They're grown in a lab. They're double terminated. They take energy. They take the information and immediately release it, unlike regular crystals, which hold in information. This one takes it and immediately lets it go to the person. Now, if you see those little black holders there, not the lines, but I couldn't figure out how to attach them. And one day I was riding my bike and they kept forcing me to look down at my bike handles. And that's when I go, oh, that's a great idea. And then so we had designed something that would fit these, these 4-sided, we have 6-sided crystals too, but 4-sided ones. And so you can't see it now, but those little wires go into the back of a digital to analog box. That's the silver box. And the silver box actually is attached into your computer. So that information is streamed through your computer, through the signal box, and then into the crystals. So and the crystals can be placed anywhere on your body. Most people just hold them in their hands, and make sure that the tip is actually in the palm chakra of their hands, so that a lot of that information is not released out into the ethers. It's encapsulated within that the person's field there. So So the fractals that you see, people don't actually have, they're wonderful, beautiful fractals.
Mm-hmm.
Set up, a kind of a color therapy too, but people don't have to look at them. The purpose of that fractals is so that we play the algorithms behind it. They're like hand in hand. And when you do that, like it's like handshaking, it's increasing the amplitude of those algorithms going to the person. So that was the whole logic behind that, which at first I didn't understand. And they said fractals amplify math.
Okay, so fractals are a beautiful visual of math in motion, math displayed. Because if it was just a bunch of math numbers, people would be bored. They'd be like, "Oh." Yeah. So this is when they play this, is it a static image of the fractals, or does it move?
It's a moving image. It's a moving image, and it's morphing into other things and so forth like that. It's really we have quite a number of different ones. It's not just one.
Okay.
And depending on the feel for what the program is, when you have ones that are more stress reducing and so forth, we play more of the blues, fractals that have those kind of colors in. The more energizing ones maybe have much more, oranges or yellows or reds, energizing colors as well. But they're all moving images. And so, I mean, people can look into them. I've had one person said, the fractals came out of the screen like a 3D, image. And I said, what kind of computer do you have? Because I've never seen that. So it affects people differently.
Yeah. Well, the fractal images, I mean, they're very much like watching Mandelbrot sets or
Yes.
They're very hypnotic, and they induce kind of a calming focus. It's almost like a meditation, because when you're looking at certain fractals, you're not thinking about your mommy daddy issues and what you're going to eat for dinner. Yes, okay. Right. So which knows that you're in a meditative state, and you're like basically going back and connecting to source. So and so the fractals kind of help, and especially the moving, help achieve that meditative connection to source. You got to get into that high gamma brainwave healing frequency in order to, get the benefits of that connection to the crystalline consciousness within you, the God source within you. So I can totally understand why your spirit guide said we need the fractal image for people to look at, and then the math. The math matches the fractals, or it could be any set of fractals. Could they mix and match?
And because people start to think that, when they started looking at the fractals initially, they thought they were driving the fractals by holding the crystals. And we said, no, that's not the case. Those fractals are moving with the math, not interpreting the math. Okay. So they're doing their job, whether you look at them or not. And so no one I had up until that point had actually used the science of fractals with math and crystals. So, Trinfinity 8, like I said, it came out in 2009, and we had all the energy practitioners of subtle energy going. Like we debuted it at a subtle energy conference in Denver, Colorado, where all the big researchers came. And I just put 2 devices out, and I said, free sessions, everybody just try it out, because I didn't know what it was going to do. Mm-hmm. And our booth was mobbed. In fact, the other vendors were a little mad that everybody kept going over to our booth because they had never seen anything like this. And the guy who started the International Society for the Study of Energy and Energy Medicine was a guy named, oh my God, I just forgot it right now. But he was from the Menninger Institute. And he said he had been shown many, many years ago that a device, something like this, would come into the future, and to start an organization where this type of technology would be able to be debuted. And so people who could read energy were watching what was going on around the person while they were on it. And this one woman said, oh my God, there's all this like sharding coming out of the person. And I would look over, and what it was playing was release emotional blockages. So it was all that negative stuff. And then another one said, oh no, all this beautiful like rainbow plumping is coming out of the body. And I look over and it was playing, balance energy centers. And so it was really interesting. And we had a lot of psychics come on and they said, oh, my guides knew exactly what this was. They said, this is Atlantean technology. It's just packaged differently.
It's just packaged differently. So I have a question between the 6-sided crystal, because the rods here, the crystal rods, what's the difference between a 6-sided one and a 4-sided one?
Well, the more we use the 6-sided one for the spiritual programs.
Okay.
And more so for the Ascension 11. And the physical ones are like the the pyramid side, 4-sided. It is more physical related. So that's why we hear the 4-sided. They told me that it's better for physical 4-sided. Spiritual will get you into other realms that you're doing. So sometimes our people buy both, and they say, okay, so I can switch out.
So you can switch out. Okay, so 6-sided is spiritual, more multifaceted, and then 4-sided is physical. Yeah. Now, let me ask you something more about the crystals. So you say the organic crystals hold information and the lab created crystals basically become a transmuter. They let the energy go through. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I had to find a lab in the world that would grow it. It can't grow it in the United States. Nobody does it. And what they do is they start off with in an autoclave, a seed crystal, and it takes about a month to grow these crystals. Then they cut and they polish them to whatever your specifications are. And they're so pure. I mean, they look like glass, but they're pure quartz crystal.
Yeah.
And, we had somebody once, a psychologist that said, I had 2 regular like crystal globes on the side of Trinfinity while I was doing, and they were pretty clear. And she said, by the end of the session, they were all cloudy. They took in all the information because crystals talk to other crystals. And she said it took a couple days for them to return back to their more clear state. They held it in, that information, where we designed our crystals to take it and immediately disperse it to the person, not
the person. Yeah. That's really good to know. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you about the crystals is, have you tried maybe like Lemurian crystals or red crystals to see if that makes a difference?
Well, some people, put crystals on their body even when they're holding the thing, holding our rods, crystal rods, which is, by the way, very Egyptian. I mean, the pharaohs used to walk around with, they call the wands of Horus or the rods of Ra. And they were copper tubes and they had crystals inside it. And they never left home without it. It was geared to balancing the energy. So it's, like I said, it's very Egyptian. Very Atlantean, because the Atlantean society really formed the Egyptian society and the culture. And so, like I said, that's why he said this is In fact, he said it was Atlantean. He said, I didn't think I'd see this technology in this lifetime. I was really surprised. He was a psychic. And he said, but here it is again, just in a different package. Yeah. So you can, but to attach those, no, because you don't get pure, quartz on Lemurian crystals. It's a whole different type of crystal. So these, even though they're synthetic, they're grown from crystal seeds, and they add a little bit more over time until you have a full crystal. So they are crystals, but they're synthetically grown.
Okay. So for crystal lovers, people who love crystals and collect crystals, because some people use crystals for healing, for meditations, for a variety of different things. What's your perspective on lab created crystals versus organic?
Well, I use both, but with Trinfinity, obviously the best one I was told by my guides were these particular type of crystals.
For the transfer of the energy.
Yes,
okay.
For transfer of energy. But if you're doing your own work, use regular crystals for that. Yeah, most people, don't have these type of things available to them,
Right.
And they don't need to be, they just need to be washed, wiped down with water. They don't need to be put out in the sun to get rid of that stuff because they're like self-cleaning crystals. They let go of stuff. And, sort of like, I wish we had that where we could just let go of all of our emotions like these crystals. They just take it in and immediately let go.
Wow, was wonderful. So if you guys wanted to try the Trinfinity 8 system, it is relatively expensive. But if you wanted to, you can go to the sales form and then submit a request. And the salesperson, what do they do if you wanted to buy one of these units for yourself?
Well,
Like
they'll
let's say
either-
you're a healthcare or a energy healing alternative medicine practitioner, and you wanted to have this in your office.
which we have a lot of them. We even have what do you call it? Estheticians, plastic surgeons in LA using them to speed up tissue repair after surgeries. We've had naturopaths, osteopaths, chiropractors, massage therapists, Reiki instructors, ministers, psychologists, psychiatrists. We've had the gamut of everyone. It's one of those tools, especially with some people that are difficult. It kind of helps soften up the gunk to get rid of, so then healing can be facilitated. And as I said earlier, you do the healing, but it facilitates that so you can do your own healing much faster and quicker. And so and it's remote. You can do remote sessions with this as well. You can send to anybody. We've even had people in England. We have someone who just does nothing but clearing ghosts and entities from houses. And London has a lot of those. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
She said she was successful. When this one house was really difficult, and right before this tenacious spirit left, it took the crystals right out of her hand and threw them up in the air.
It was pissed off. It was like, how dare you kick me out? It's okay. It's okay. You've had your time. It's time to move on.
Right. So distance doesn't matter what the distance. So that's why we say, our practitioners, you don't have to have a practitioner you actually go to. You can work with somebody who does remotely on you using a photograph of you, a recent photograph, or your name, and so far we don't need blood or hair or any of that kind of stuff, and they'll find out what you're dealing with, whether it be an emotional trauma, physical problems, and so forth, and they'll devise a program for you, and allow you to know when they're going to play it, so you can be in a quiet space if you want. And if you want to hold your own crystals in hand, fine too. It's just so it's like you're not at the gym working out, because we've had some people say, wow, that felt like a lot of energy. Now, some people are very sensitive, so we have mild, normal, and intense settings too. And we kind of figure what's the best and how long to play certain things. And sometimes we can play 10 different ones, one right after the other, not all at the same time, because that's way too much for the energy.
Right.
Body. So
you can find any one of these practitioners on the practitioners page within Trinfinity 8, and I have been clicking through to different ones in the United States. Do you have?
We have many more. It's just that those are the ones that wanted to be advertised. And if somebody does want to buy it, they just need to go to the sales page. There's like 4 different worldwide distributors there. Mm-hmm. They'll call you back or email you or whatever it needs to facilitate whatever that process is. But, not everybody can afford. I mean, most of the time the practitioners can, because they lay in lots of different tools in their practices. But
right.
So it's going to be different for everyone.
Right. So there are local practitioners listed on the website. And if it's not listed on the website, you can reach out to sales through the contact us form. And
the main office of sales.
The main office.
Yeah,
okay.
And they'll let you know who's good and who likes to do remote sessions for people. And, it's usually pretty much a sliding fee scale or something like that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Great.
Well, sometimes some do it for free too. You just don't know. Some look at it as their energetic mission,
Yeah, that'd be great. So you guys, and there's people in Brazil, there's people in South Africa. I found one over in my little island oasis in the Seattle area. There's one in what is it? It looks like Romania, maybe.
Oh yeah, I know that one.
You
can't see the Europe map right now unless you kind of pull it over. But we have a lot of people in Europe. A lot of people.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yes,
yeah.
So they're all over.
Yeah, so you can find a practitioner in your local area. If it's not listed, check the website and reach out, and they'll probably find somebody closer if you want to be there in person to feel that physical healing or that physical effect. However, the effect is the same even if you find somebody distance-wise, right? You're going to get the same effect.
Yeah. Yes, we found it doesn't seem to matter, and then we tweak it because not a one size fits all. We get your feedback, what did you experience, because it's what we found is pretty, it's a pretty good bet if people are experiencing pain because, and so we work on the inflammatory process in the body and to decrease that because behind every disease is inflammation. And so if you can address the inflammation, and sometimes we do it emotionally too, because inflammation and swelling is like anger, in the body. It's
well, that was the common emotion that emotion that you got from people when you first came into your empathic abilities is everybody's angry.
And that comes from, feeling powerless about something. So, and we've all felt powerless at one time or another in our life, or, it's like, what do we fear? Not being loved, being rejected, being powerless, it's the same usual ones it all gets down to, where as humans, we all experience that.
That's awesome. So lots of good stuff there. And then Ascension 11 is the spirituality version of this. Now, it is a little bit more affordable than the Trinfinity 8 that a lot of holistic practitioners use in their spas or in their alternative medicine.
Stop right there. Yeah.
Okay.
These are all 11 IM programs. They're all 33-minute programs, much longer. Each frequency, each algorithm, each music device has been mastered specifically for what they're trying to address. Now, this picture here, because I thought this is a little different, but I was told, and my guides told me, that you need to combine it with the water resonance. So I found a place that I sent them a file. They didn't know what was in the file. It just sounded like white noise, but it was actually algorithms. But, you can't hear algorithms. And so it sounds like white noise if you played it in a sound file. And I said, I want you to resonate this on your water thing, like the Emoto things, and see if anything comes up. And they got this image and others, and they said, oh, my God, what is this? Because it's coming up with really complex sacred geometry. And later I had to tell them what it was the algorithm for golden light to the pineal gland. Okay. And so we took all those visuals from being resonating on water, and those are what's played, many of them under each of those 11 different Ascension 11 programs. So you're actually seeing the algorithms visualized in water images, which no one's ever done either. That's
awesome. So the math is at a higher resonance, so that's why you can't hear that. You just goes the white noise, but there is actually a form being created, and you can see that in semantics. Soundmadevisible.com. That's awesome. I love semantics. I wonder, have you ever tried playing the because in Buddhism, the ancient form of semantics before the simoscope technology was developed, they use singing bowls to see what the mandala looks like. Have you ever tried sending the sound of the algorithm into a singing bowl to see if it comes up with anything?
I personally haven't. I wouldn't be surprised if one of our, thousands of practitioners has done it, because people have done some really unusual experimentation. With this. And so, I even had a guy when we first started, he says, it's decreased my gas mileage. I said, how'd you do that? And he said, I ran a program, I forgot what program it was. I think it was an energy stimulation program. And he put the crystals running the program, and he put it on the dashboard of his car, and then he started tracking mileage. And so it's like, I said, okay, well, it's like the experimentation, how creative people get is really quite amazing at times. So
I want one of these. Girl, I want one of these and I want to stick it on everything. My food, my water, my bed, everything. That'd be fun. Okay, so you go to sales and you make a request for how much it is going to cost. But also, you don't have a practitioner list that also does this here?
Oh, you mean for remote sessions?
Yeah, for Ascension 11. Let's say they just want it.
No, pretty much, since this is on the Trinfinity side, they just need to go to Trinfinity. They know that we're the parent company. And many of our people also who have Trinfinity 8 also have Ascension 11. So It's not that unusual, Once they just find out how it can help their people, they definitely usually are into the spiritual component of it and want to include that as well.
Yeah. Energy healing modalities, learning energy healing, using energy healing, metaphysics, all this consciousness technology. It kind of goes in the same audience. We like one, we like the other. So, okay. So we're going to go into your events. So you have an upcoming event. I think, is this already sold out? The November to December 2022 Ancient Egyptian tour?
I actually think we have like 2 or 3 spots left. That's it at this point. And the interesting thing was, because it's always, because most of the time it's healers, and we go to a lot of the sound healing temples. And when I was told by my guides that it was really important for me to make that connection back to Egypt, where a lot of my prior lifetimes I had learned, and I'd worked with healing and sound and so forth like that. And so, the Abydos Temple, that's the home of the Melchizedeks. They don't talk about that, but I knew immediately when I got in there exactly what that place was. It felt very familiar, just like Saqqara, and so I take a lot of different healers there, and it's more, although we part of it, we present the traditional, but I present the mystery schools and the more esoteric things there. And so, we have private time in a lot of the sacred areas so that people can really reconnect again. And it's quite wonderful. It's quite amazing. Yeah.
Well, a lot of energy healing, energy wellness practitioners, they know more than one modality. They're always interested in connecting with multiple modalities, just because different ones will address different things better than others.
Yeah.
So
you have to have many tools in your belt.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Well, Merkaba Chakras is just dedicated to just providing a huge library of modalities and resources. Most of the 80-something thousand listeners are energy healers, and hopefully growing. So let me ask you. Okay, so let me ask you about Egypt. So this interesting picture on the left has this light above the temple, and then there's the moon. Where is that light from?
It's a UFO.
It's a UFO. I knew it was going to be a UFO. There's another random light.
In fact, it was the night of the full moon, and that was at Kumumbo, right along the Nile there. And the night of the full moon, and we're taking pictures of the full moon. And I took this picture, and I'm like, "What's that speck on my camera lens?" And then I move it, and I don't see it with the naked eye. And I go back, and I still see it again. And then I asked my group, I said, "Can you look in your lens of your camera and see if you see anything different than the naked eye?" They could all see it. And the minute we recognized it as a group, another one came and joined it. And then did one of those weird things.
They're doing some different shooting out here and there. There has been some interesting.
Yes. So it was kind of like, oh, how wonderful,
Now I want to ask you something. We're going a little bit off of Trinfinity. We're going to go into the metaphysics, because now we're going into your events. With energy healing towards pilgrimages like this, does this happen often, where there's some kind of extra dimensional activity going on around you guys?
Sometimes it happens.
Mm.
And, sometimes you miss it. I was in my living room the other day looking out. A friend was looking out, and she was looking out my big window. And I had my back turned. She goes, "Oh my God, I just saw a big, big ship over the ocean." And it wasn't the, regular airplane or anything. And I turned around, it's already gone, so sometimes things happen so fast, you miss them. I've seen a lot of UFOs over my lifetime. I guess I don't know, maybe you just tuned into it or something. And there's definitely a lot more on Maui where I live. But when I went to Egypt, it was like my memory banks opened. I was starting to remember things, and I actually would tell some of the guides there, not my guides, but the guy in Egypt, that's not what that's for, because they would take a guess at some things that has been the kind of like the standard, explanation for decades.
Right,
and
right.
I immediately knew that wasn't the real true story. And so I would correct them or just add what I said. Well, this is what I'm getting, take it or leave it,
Yeah. Right. For a very long time, there was a lot of suppression to recognize and show on the internet that there's more pyramids all over the world besides Egypt. And then
I've been underneath those pyramids. There's water tunnels. I've been.
There's water. There has to be water because there has to be a conductor.
No one else has been to, because I've seen them in my visions, and we between me and one of my people in Egypt there, we talked to the Department of Antiquities, and for a hefty price, they allowed us to go down there. They wanted to even know, how did I even know about them?
Yeah,
and because nobody had been down there, and of course, once they figured out that they can make some money, charging you to go down there. I mean, you can't go with a group because of the liability factor. You got to go down 150 feet under iron ladders that are kind of rickety. And I got down there, and there's a sarcophagus buried under the water. My guides told me immediately, it's hermetically sealed. You have to have the right DNA to go to it. It's a portal. And there's tunnels. And so I took water samples. I talked about it at the pyramid conference, my findings there. But, then I found out that there's water tunnels under Chichen Itza, under the Bosnian pyramid, under Teotihuacan in Mexico, many of them. So they all built on a water source. So there's something there that, nobody has kind of explained. I mean, I kind of get the picture what they're using it for. Obviously, the pyramids have been used for many different reasons over the years, and one of them obviously was as a power station, but as an ascension device, as just a ceremonial thing, now as a moneymaker, and so forth. So yeah, it's gone through its progressions as well.
Yeah. The synonymous thing is all the portal points on the earth, which typically have a pyramid, megalith, like a cathedral. It's not a coincidence that they built it there. They built it right on the portal points of Earth's grids, and there has to be water because that's the conductor to connect to the higher dimensions. So you said that the sarcophagus needed a certain DNA. What kind of DNA does it need?
Well, obviously it hasn't found that person with the right DNA yet, because we went there. There was only 3 of us. My Egyptian guide that I'd worked with for many years, the head of the Giza Plateau, and he said no one's been able to open it. And, I thought, well, that's interesting because, that was underneath. I mean, you could see that the tunnel's going, but I couldn't get in a boat and go through there,
Right.
And I think very much that those tunnels go to Hawara, which is like about 75 miles away. Because when I went to Hawara, I tracked the water. It's a long story, but there was moguls there, like collapsed water tunnels.
Uh-huh.
And I think that they did processions, or at least that's what I'm seeing in my head, to the underworld. And it was always through the solar boat, through the water, because they believed water was the source.
Right. Well, what country was the
water?
Right. Hawara, what country is that in?
Hawara is in Egypt.
In Egypt. Okay, so it's another location.
It's just another temple that many people don't go to because it's off the beaten track. But I think that it might be much more important than people think. So, it's like I go.
Did you go to it?
Oh, absolutely. I've been there twice. Yeah.
And when you went there, what did you get? What kind of access did you get for that temple?
Well, that temple, the water tunnels have collapsed, so you couldn't go down. You can see that it's collapsed, that there's an opening to go into the pyramid, but it's collapsed. So, and you can see it because the only place in Egypt near a pyramid where there's moguls in the sand all over the place is Hawara. So that tells me something has collapsed, underneath. And so I'm pretty much sure you can't access those anymore.
Okay.
But there was a lake there at one time, and that lake was had gone from it went from salt water, and then something changed it to fresh water. And the water underneath the pyramid tunnels, the Giza pyramid tunnels, when we did a water sample test at a lab, showed it had high salinity. And it's 5 miles from the Nile, which is fresh water, and much further from the Mediterranean. So they're saying, like, what's the source there? So we know it's coming from somewhere else.
Right. And it's speculated that it might be coming from the Giza pyramids, right?
Well, we think it may have come from Hawara, which changed to, and at one time, and nobody knows how the water changed there. This happened, many millennium ago. And so that's it's still a mystery. But there was Dolores Cannon, no, not Dolores Cannon. I forgot her name. She did topography, kind of unofficial, because the government doesn't want you to do this stuff. And she found out that there was many levels under Hawara, some the size of football fields, rooms. So, my remote viewing of underneath because I learned by Russell Targ, from the Stanford Research Project, the military stuff. And he had taught me how to remote view. And when I remote viewed under the Great Pyramid, I saw many tunnels. That was before I went down there and actually saw them, and also a city. So there's a city down underneath there. And that's why
it's a crystal city, or what is a city like?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a crystal city. I mean, I didn't get to see all of it or so forth, but there's large spaces down there. So they use that. There was like, that old saying, as above, so below. Yeah, it was almost like there's an inverted pyramid below there that is just as powerful. So that's all.
Okay, so the other question that I have with your Egypt tours, you're telling me this is fascinating. So the image you have on your website on the left are these energy healing ladies are putting their hand. What are they doing? Reiki on this?
It's an altar stone. Many of these temples have ancient altar stones. Some have stones where they call the reincarnation room. I think that's at Karnak Temple. And I think this one is Karnak Temple. I don't remember specifically. But a lot of them do have they're called the Holy of Holy stones, where they did their ceremonies and so forth. And so, sometimes people have come in and gunked up the energy of these places. So sometimes you try the best to try to, bring in some good energy, because, bad energy attracts to light too and wants to gunk it up.
Yeah. So these Atlantis-Egyptian tours that you do, what's this connection? What is the Egyptian Atlantis, all these different portal points in these megaliths and pyramids, and also even in nature, because there's a lot of grid points all over the place. What is its connection to 5D ascension process? And ascension is just raising your frequency and your consciousness up to higher dimensions.
Yeah.
What's the connection?
It's my understanding that, when the universe was created, it was created one dimension within the other, all one connection. Then the next, it was encompassed in each of them, 12 different dimensions. And then it's still growing. And, it's to return, work your way through those dimensions. I mean, obviously the first dimension is, rocks, minerals, things like that. And second one was, more plant life and animal life. And really, humans didn't come into the third dimension into material form. So we're moving in, and right now is, as they say, a critical time, not without going into the whole dimension of ascension, but the ancient Egyptians learned it from the Atlanteans. So there's a pre-dynastic civilizations that we don't talk about because most of that information has been lost. But all what the Atlanteans were doing, they seeded all that information because many of their outposts, they knew that sooner or later, because we know that from science tells us that there's been at least 83 different pole reversals on this planet over many millenniums. And, when lands go down, information gets lost, history gets lost, and new lands rise in different places. But the Atlanteans kind of were clued into this. And so what they did is they did colonizations. Outposts in different places. Antarctica was an outpost at one time. It was very fertile and lush. And now scientists are finding that underneath the cap, there's indication that there's a lot of carbon dioxide, that it was a lot of green. It was really good. Carbon dioxide is not a bad thing. It helps plant growth and everything else. And they seeded their information there so it wouldn't be lost. Even the Great Pyramid, which had limestone casing on it that is now gone, as early as the early 1800s, there was still information inscrolled on that limestone all over the pyramid that would have filled many, many, many books. And that was yanked off, used in, building materials for other things. So we lost all of that information too. So, it's just, that's why, it's sort of like, you got to take everything with a grain of salt with history, because we just we no longer have access to the truth.
Well, let me ask you this, since you've been in there and you've seen King Tut's casket, the gold casket. The iconic image of King Tut, the gold I'm losing my words here. The gold figure, does it have one snake or cobra on the head, or what do you remember?
Well, usually that there's a snake, there, meaning that he's been initiated, into some of the higher realms. Now, there was snake cults in Egypt as well. And, as everything, some were good and some were not so good. I guess some things never change. And some used it maybe satanically and some not, the rising Kundalini energy and enlightenment. Usually that was a sign that they had been initiated, into the more esoteric arts.
Okay. And, so you remember one snake.
Tut was a nobody. Just because they found his tomb, he became a somebody, but he was really a nobody.
Okay. So King Tut, so the image of King Tut's head, you remember and you saw when you went there, it had one cobra on the forehead.
Well, that's not unusual, though. That is not unusual.
But there was one cobra, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, if you look even in, excuse me, in inside the tomb, you can go in, and his mummy is actually in a glass case. You're not supposed to take pictures, but I snuck one. And if you look close, there's an indentation where his head is, trying to cover up the fact that he did have somewhat of an elongated skull. And he was the son of Akhenaten. Well, there's some say that he may have been his younger brother. So there's some discrepancies there, on some things. And, Akhenaten, they called him the heretic king. He definitely did not look from this earth. He had a very dysmorphic shaped body. He had an elongated skull. So did Queen Nefertiti. And so we know that, I have access to certain people, and they even said, that they found at Dashur, which is not far from Cairo, that they unearthed an alien mummy, and it had the markings on it. And I saw the picture of it. It definitely looked like an alien. And it said, devoted counselor, Asarat, devoted counselor to the Pharaoh. And so, yeah, I think that, they had ET visitors back then too. And, things weren't, he looked like he could have been maybe a little gray. I don't know,
Okay.
the shape of the head and so forth.
Okay. Okay. Well, the reason why I asked that, because I was looking at the image of the flyer of the itinerary for your Egyptian tours, and the image of, okay, you have the image of the King Tut's tomb here. And if you look really closely, there's two snake heads that come out of the forehead. And I just did a brave internet search to see that. So here's an old image, another image. There's one snake head that comes out of the forehead. I just did a search on the internet.
Third eye.
The third eye, And I do a search on I don't do a search necessarily on Google, because there's some information that is been scrubbed. So I do it on Brave, DuckDuckGo, and some other ones just to measure. So here's another one right here.
But remember, these are on the headdresses.
On the headdresses.
On the headdresses.
Okay.
It's not like he really has a snake coming out of his
no, I know. But the point is that I'm making, that this is why I asked. I grew up remembering very vividly, and I even went to some of the traveling tours of King Tut's tomb. In the Godhead sculpture, he had one cobra coming out of his forehead on the crown. It was only one. It was always one. Now, all of a sudden, it's always been two. Okay. So you see all the search engine results. There's two cobras coming out of the front.
I think one might be just the continuation of them on the back. And remember, they did wear different headdresses. And this is from the Cairo Museum.
This is from the Cairo. This is from the Cairo Museum. Yeah. So why is this a something to do with parallel realities, where one person's reality had one cobra coming out of the headdress on the same statue? Like, I saw this statue right here on a tour of a traveling tour of King Tut's tomb, and they had this exact display here. Whereas in this reality, it's always been two cobras coming out of the headdress. What does your spirit guide say about the discrepancy? And it's always been that way, because I was looking at your flyer here of what you saw when you were there, and there's two cobras coming out of the headdress.
Yeah, they're saying don't read as much into it because of the headdress component, but sometimes it could represent Upper and Lower Egypt, and combining the two regions together, which they were always trying to unite. It's just like the upper chakras and the lower chakras, uniting them as well. But usually that meant, that they had been initiated into, like, the priesthood, the higher. I mean, all pharaohs had to go through that process, sooner or later. And I mean, even Jesus, the lost years of Jesus, say that he went to Egypt and was tutored by the Melchizedek priests. Those were the cosmic priests to the priests. And those were the true visionaries.
Yeah.
I mean, not all priests in Egypt were created equal. There was some really bad ones in there too.
Right. I just find it interesting that you have some images of King Tut's tomb and headdress where he had one cobra coming out of his pineal gland, and then you have others that have two. So that's a big argument. Like, here's one with one. That's a big argument. Is this another Mandela effect? Have you heard about that?
I really couldn't say. He died at a young age. He didn't even really accomplish much, and so I doubt if he was highly advanced in any of the spiritual components,
Right.
Unlike his father. And he probably had a really hard time too, because they tried to wipe his father or his older brother, depending on which story you want to go by, off of all the records because, he wanted to unite one God, Ra, where all the priests wanted, multiple gods, which they had more control over the people with multiple gods, and they can take a lot more money too, and a lot more things,
Yeah.
So not too much has changed over the years.
Yeah. Well, I think the Atlantean-Egyptian tours that you give are fascinating. And if there's anybody to go to these portal sites and pilgrimage sites with, it's going to be a group of energy healers because you guys have extra access. The consciousness is the key. It's the key
right. And this time,
more
my
of
good
experience.
friend Karen Glass, who's a medium psychic who's very good. She's been on my trips before, and she's wanted to do this one together with me and bringing in also the psychic component of it. So this should be interesting. It's always interesting to see who shows up because who's meant to be on the trip will be on the trip.
Yeah. Oh, it's exciting. Like, and aside from Egypt, is there any other ones if somebody misses the Egyptian one, is there any other ones that you're planning to do?
No, I've only been drawn to Egypt. People say,
Okay.
why don't you do any of the other sacred sites? I've been to many of the other sacred sites, but, they didn't call to me like Egypt. I must have spent many lifetimes. Well, I have spent many lifetimes there.
Yeah. Egypt. Yeah. Egypt is a picture of in my background.
Yes,
okay.
I did see it earlier.
Okay, so how can we use our consciousness to teleport our spirit to the version of ourselves that exists in the best timeline within God's multiverse? So can you give people some tips?
Damn if I know. Excuse me.
Yeah, no worries. You do know. Yes. That's why I'm asking you the questions.
This is really the age of discernment for people. So it's really learning to tune out everybody else's things, telling you how to live, what to do, what to think, and so forth like that. And there's a lot of people out there that are false prophets. They're leading you down the path, and they're moving you away from listening to that small voice within, because all of the answers are within you. And many of you already know that, but some, still think that, I can't trust my answers. I need somebody else to tell me what's true. So, that's why so many people are kind of being misled right now during this time. And it's unfortunate, but everybody is in a different, part of their path or different stage of their development. And, we all were there at one time or another, or maybe we still are. And, so, sometimes you wonder, did I jump a timeline here? I mean, I went to a place once that always had chai tea, and I loved it there, the chai tea. And then I went there once and I said, give me the hot chai tea. And they said, we don't have any. I said, you're out? He said, we've never carried chai tea.
That was your experience?
My friends were there, and we looked at each other like, we've had it here before. And we asked the owner, she goes, no, we've never provided it here. And I thought, oh my God, did we jump into
What did you do different to go into that new parallel reality that you existed now? Do you remember what you did differently? I always ask every one of my audience members when they talk about a Mandela effect or a personal experience where they shifted between one version of reality to another. Do you remember if you did anything different or healed something or learned something new?
There was a few things that kind of told me I jumped at reality, and I kept thinking, well, this one seems like a harder reality, but they said, you bought tickets to be around to see this process. You won a lottery ticket to see this. I know, process.
But the golden ticket has a lot of loops and turns, and the Oompa Loompa factory is not what it was sold in the pamphlet.
We don't have to suffer. I mean, it's only if we think we're suffering. We'll rise beyond it. Someone once said to me, you can't control all that stuff out there. All you can control about is how you react to it, and just take that time and realize what's important. Love who you love in your life. Get the most joy out of that, and know that maybe the world will kind of fall apart around you because the lunatics from the asylum are now running it. And just do the best you can.
That's a loaded answer. Yes. Yeah. God. I don't know. I always ask myself, I don't know if it's going to I'm there is a higher vision for why we took the golden ticket here. And not everybody's going to make it to the end of the game, but hopefully
but
more
you
people
can't
will.
destroy the soul. We'll be back or one way or another, or if but I know if we don't make this ascension, this is very important to us. They said this dimension will eventually collapse in and on itself and die.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we try to kind of get our act together and release what it is we're working on, and the negativity and hate and whatever, because there's an awful lot of hate out there, or judgment, going on right now, like in steroids, like I've never seen before. And it's very toxic. So
a lot of people are triggered. All those triggers tell you, oh, you got to work on that. And oh, you got to work on that. And if you get to the point where a trigger doesn't trigger you anymore, then you finally found neutrality. Okay.
Yeah,
you've healed. That's when you know you've healed whatever is causing that.
You can remain neutral.
You can remain neutral.
Remain neutral.
The middle path. The middle path is always what in Buddhism is advertised as neutrality, the middle path. Always try to come back to the middle path. Always. That's
I try to call it a neutral idling state, because when you have no expectations of what you can gain from the future or in the immediate, then magic happens, because it's the expectations that sometimes mess you up. And Top Gun pilots, like in the military, when you do brainwave training on them, which I have, they go into this kind of alpha neutral idling state, and then, oh my God, they're like top guns. So the brain knows how to facilitate that it's like waiting at the bus stop, waiting, without any expectations until you're engaged. And that's kind of what we're learning to be in that neutral idling state.
So I have one last question for you, Dr. Kathi Forti. For the people who are working on raising their frequencies to get fifth dimensional consciousness and get transition with Earth to that dimension and that reality, that parallel reality that is currently existing, from one, I don't know if you want to call it Mandela effect, reality shift from one experience to another. And there's going to be a lot of loops and turns, discernment here, discernment there. It's going to be a crazy ride, but we got front row tickets, the golden ticket to the freak show is what I call it. But what last message do you have for people to kind of give encouragement as this journey unravels?
Well, if nothing else, I say your body is your temple. Take care of it. Treat it well, whether it be good food, exercise, whatever, and meditate. Take time out during the day to just empty all of that, leave it behind, and recharge and listen to that still voice within. The more you do that, and pay attention to your dreams, definitely, because everything you get the heads up beforehand. It's like I was told in beginning of 2019, I woke up and I heard as clear as my head, Kathi, it's time to leave California. And I said, well, where am I going? And they told me at the time. It wasn't here, it was somewhere else. And, and then California has been through lots of different changes, and that wasn't my time to experience those changes.
It wasn't your life lesson.
Wasn't my life lesson. I was to go elsewhere during that time, and I was kind of hearing this from other people. They were leaving too, There's people that stayed behind to hold the light, but some of us decided we were needed elsewhere. And so, listen to those, whatever messages you're getting in your dream state or meditative state or so forth like that. Be your own guru. Don't let anybody else be your guru. Be your own guru. And I do have one last shameless plug.
Yes.
I just released a book. It's a fictional book called Stack's Library of Truth that takes in stargates and portal. It takes place in the Library of Congress, where an employee discovers a portal into a holographic library of truth where all the answers are. And my guides gave me the plot for that. And it's a trilogy series. The second book is getting ready to come out in another month, but you can get it on Amazon, Stack's Library of Truths. So that's my shameless plug.
No, not. And I'm going to put that in the show description. And just for I know a lot of the audience members love learning new modalities and new ways to connect to the crystalline consciousness of source within them. If the information is true and is coming from the spirit world or from these higher dimensions, then you will find some physical evidence of it. So even if it comes through in a sci-fi book, there is some nuggets and leads that could lead you to
and it takes in the alien agenda and everything else. And they were telling me things that I did not know. And I'm like, okay, I'll write it into the book. And it's like, wow.
Okay, now I got to read the book.
That really kind of change your thoughts, because I thought I knew enough about that. And there's certain things I did not know. So it's all in the book.
Oh, well, you know what, Kathi? I could talk to you forever. You're so easy to talk to, and I totally want to talk about the Buddhist, Lemurian, Atlantean folklore is that the higher consciousness you are, the more connected you are to all the other creations within Source, which means aliens. Okay, you connect to your higher cosmic family. But that is for another episode. So maybe after you do your Egyptian tours, maybe we're gonna get some fantastic conversation topics that come from that. So Dr. Kathi Forti, I love learning about more ways to heal the body of illness and viruses with bioengineered technology that connects to the avatar of the suffering soul, to the crystalline consciousness healing of our creator itself. So for more information to where to locate a Trinfinity 8 or what's the other one?
Ascension 11.
Ascension 11, thank you. Or to find a practitioner in your area, just go to Kathi Forti's website, which is Trinfinity8.com, Ascension11.com. And with that, thank you kindly for listening to another enlightening conversation. Until next time, blessings.
Oh, may blessings. Yeah. Thank you, Vaughn.
You're welcome.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Merkaba Chakras, where we talk Buddhism in the 5th dimension. For more information about today's guest, please go to the show description. For more information about Vaughn's metaphysical work, please go to merkabachakras.com. The views expressed today are for entertainment purposes and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or replace any medical or legal advice. Don't forget to subscribe for more interviews about the 5th dimension. Until we meet again, blessings.